What's up, everyone? Welcome to Cryopodcast, where we talk about what we love about Warframe, its greatest successes, how we, the players, received it, and areas of improvement. We're a group of players from Umbra Templarii Clan that range from seasoned veterans, hardcore and casual players, and newbies. Everything discussed or will be discussed is all our individual opinion. So let's jump right in. Today we have Andre, Jay, Tyler, myself, and Ty.
Yep. Hello.
Thanks for joining us today, guys. Today's episode is going to be about game updates and UI. All right.
Yay.
So let's start with updates. How do you guys feel about updates in the game and the quality of the releases? And if you have a favorite, tell us about it.
Update wise, I think it's fine, except of course it comes out not fully fleshed out. It has bugs, all that stuff. Bugs, just like bugs that you just don't. You're doing like new content, and you're just like, what just happened?
Oh yeah. I feel like always like within like the first hour, someone finds an like a exploitable bug, and then the hotfix has to drop like so fast.
I haven't. Are you talking about for like resource gathering stuff like that, or are you talking about like?
Well, let's say like let's take like Scarlet Spear for example. There were some big bugs, and one of them wasn't patched actually until after the event was over, right? The limbo
one, the limbo confusion.
Yeah, that one actually, I really like that bug.
There's also disruption. You remember the Demolist one where you had like Demolist and people with Loki that teleport the Demolists off?
That's how kill it.
Yeah. And then they banned a bunch of people for doing it. I don't know. I mean, we weren't caught in that. That's cool because we didn't play that way. But do you consider that like they punished people for that one? That was pretty harsh.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah. Actually, that for me that kind of leaves like a bad taste in my mouth because the game, like the PC version is like it still feels like it's in beta. It's kind of a meme now that the game is released, so it's not technically in beta. But when you release content that hasn't been play tested or that hasn't been QA'd, and then somebody finds what's wrong with it, and then they exploit it, I mean, is it really like a ban-worthy offense?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's kind of, in my opinion, that's on the dev shoulders. That shouldn't be community. That's community getting punished. That's a tool that's available in the game. That's too bad. If you didn't,
you released it that way. You can't blame people for using it. If you made it that way.
Yep. For me, my favorite was probably like a lot of the open world content. Like I really love Plains. I really love Fortuna.
Oh yeah.
Like a lot of like the artistic aspects, I guess, like the sunsets, the whole night thing, even the sound, like the weather effects. They added rain later, and then like even like the weather, how that affected. I know a lot of good things came later. I know upon release it was tough, like loot disappearing after like hours of farm, and like when post migration issues and loss of loot. There were a lot of issues like bugs like that. But in terms of as an update and in terms of the content. I really loved a lot of that content. Fortuna 2, it added like a whole, like a winter feel, and you could hear the wind through the mountain, like the wind blowing. I loved a lot of that stuff. Yeah. For me, those are my favorite updates, open world, for sure. The content, like the quality, I don't know if I can speak for a lot of the community on this one, but I feel that, like, as Andre mentioned earlier, like a lot of the polishing, there was a really lack of polish. In terms of artistic polish, it was there. There were a few visual bugs
there,
right? I think, but gameplay wise, it was
developing. I really liked like the new war updates, like and like what the story's fleshing out to be now with like the Railjack updates. Like the story feels so much more substantial with like the story behind Railjack and all that, and heading towards the sentience than it's ever been. I think.
Yeah, and it brings up a lot of the stuff that maybe surrounds Ordis, like why he lost his memory and stuff like that. That for me is like really big. It's still a big question mark, I think, in a lot of the community's mind. Like, what? I don't really, like. He has this line that he says, like, "Do you remember the old war?" It's like I don't really remember it or whatever the line he says, and it's like, wow, like I still want to know what happened. And then the cinematic.
That one of the few things he says that isn't annoying.
Yeah,
but actually like.
I don't know. I love Ordis, man. I don't find him annoying at all. I mean, he's on full play mode for me. He always talks.
Hey, look. One of my favorite updates was Railjack. It added the space ship mechanic that I
finally
I enjoy.
Space Ninja finally have spaceships we can fly.
I mean, it was
10 years, but we made it, guys.
Like it was very
awesome.
not polished, but it was still fun for me personally because it's like I get to finally just pilot a ship, raid Grineers, just like actually like
actually flying out from the ship as a Space Ninja and raiding another ship, assassinating all the Grineer on there, like how freaking awesome is that? And I know corporates are coming up next or infested, like whichever comes up next for Railjack, it's gonna be pretty awesome. It's gonna be fantastic.
It's probably gonna be more sentient content first because I think it's New War, so
it's New War, Like, corporates obviously have spaceships, right? And what's that big boss for infested again? The flying guy.
What's Jordis?
You're talking about Jordis?
Jordis, that's right.
From the raid, right?
Oh man, imagine fighting that guy in the Railjack. Maybe he returns. I don't know.
Oh no, he brings the whole fleet.
That thing was such a bullet sponge. Oh man, it's not so bad now, but back then, like I think it took me like 2 hours to beat him, and because I didn't know how. I was a noob.
But as of right now, though, for Railjack is definitely much more enjoyable now, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, balance changes are different, right? Because that update is to me is like a minor tweak. Like, but having like bugs where like people get black screened or they fall out of the map.
I got stuck in one of the galleons at one point. I couldn't get out, even if I used the Omni tool. I was just stuck there.
Yeah.
There was that. There were walls in the middle of maps. There were people who would, you'd get on a turret and you'd get bugged. You'd be half in the ship and half out of the ship. You could like use your Arcwing in like the land areas, like the part like where you go into the base and you're still on your Arcwing, you're using your arc gun and just flying around. There was the opposite too. So there were, I guess, desync issues. So people would jump into space and then they'd be bullet jumping and sprinting in space with their Warframe thing, and they could use powers. that was interesting, like using your Warframe powers on those ships as they're flying around. It's like, wait.
I remember the one desync that I have in Railjack where I was going out to board a what are those ships called? Like cruise ships. And I was flying with my Rubico. I'm like, huh? And I'm just sniping all those ships down.
But that bug has been in the game even prior to that, though. That one was in the game for a long. Yep. Oh yeah. It's been in the game for a while.
I regret it made the ships easier to kill because I literally one-shot them.
Yeah.
Jay's got like half his life in this game, so he remembers most of this stuff.
Hey! I'm not a founder. Don't attack me.
You basically live in this game. Like if anyone here like deserves to be a founder, it's probably you.
I've played the game for a while. That's for sure. I have a lot of hours in the game. So I do have my perspective of all on, I guess.
Look, I became a founder because I wanted to support this smaller company in this game.
Right.
I really enjoy. Okay.
Yeah.
Look, the company was new. The game had amazing.
Every video we hear this. Every single video.
Oh yeah. That's kind of today's conversation, right? Like this game with so much potential. There's still like core underlying issues that still need addressing, right?
Sure.
Even though it's been released on PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch, Nintendo Switch.
I wonder how is it on the Switch.
It's on the Switch, yeah.
No, I mean like how is it?
I have no idea. I had the Switch and I was about to port it over, but then I realized personally I spent so much time in this game anyways. Do I really want to play two versions of a game and do double the farm?
Yeah,
that's... If I switch over, the only reason I would do it is if my friends were doing it, right? And also, consoles have generations, and generations of games that also follow it. So once a console its life ends and the next one begins, how much of that work will be able to follow, that I did? Whereas on PC, I can ditch this PC, build another one or buy another one, and just re-download the game. Progress is still there. Yeah, so that's kind of was my thought.
Well, I'm just wondering, have you guys played the game on like another version, like like a console version, like notice like the updates are different. Like I know that PC updates are first, but I find that like the updates, like they learn from PC, and then it's like way better on console. That's what I've heard.
Consoles get the optimized
we're like the testing grounds. Are we like the guinea pigs? I'm not sure, but that's how it feels. Am I the only one?
I will positively say this: if DE denies it, that's fine. Whatever, they can say what they want. It's their game. But that's my opinion. That's how I feel that we test out the new content, then DE looks at it, fixes it, and then they release that patch to the content. I should say the new content to consoles. Yeah. So so I think we just talked about like those people who are banned, right? They're the ones testing the game. So what if they exploit it, right? Like we're here to test it. Like those guys should not have been banned. They discover the bug so that DE can fix it and then port a workable version to consoles. But anyways, that's my feeling on that.
Yeah, if they discovered the bug time first release, yeah, I don't think they should be banned. They should, if anything, just be like told like, hey, this wasn't part of the, this isn't as intended.
Ones to discover it, like you can discover many more things by like exploiting the bug. Yes, they probably they exploited the bug in a way that's probably like not intended, and it's game breaking. But there is more information also to be found when you do that. When people exploit the bug multiple times over and over again. I mean, do you agree? I'm not saying that was their intention, but
no, like I don't agree with the ban on people who discover the bug and uses it, but then to people who hear the bug word of mouth from other players who found the bug and they do it themselves, as like I don't condone bug usage, personal exploitation in any way, because I also play competitive games, and one game that had huge bug issues that actually breaks the game because it's a competitive game is Siege.
Yeah.
Like
you make a fair point, but I think we're digressing here. So DE prides up in being a smaller company than others, right? And DE is really pushing new content out there, but should they be focusing on new content or should they fix older outstanding issues in the game? What do you guys think?
Try balance it.
I don't know. That's a tough one because we don't work there, so I don't know. There are a lot of things that can affect that. There's like a lot of maybe inner workings of the company that we don't understand. There could be financial issues. There could be like manpower issues. It could be a hiring thing. For all we know, it could be any of those things. It may be a combination of all of those things. But regardless, it seems that there definitely is a big priority on DE's end for pushing new content. And in my opinion, that only goes so far because you have like a lot of player base who are maybe at the end game, like me. But and maybe they're driven to say, okay, I want something more, I want more. But I think like in bigger companies, for example, like because I know DE is a smaller company, like they have different different teams that do different things. I feel there might be a lot of overlap in DE. That's how I feel about it. I'm not sure. I think there's like a lot of
teams, though, right?
Right. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Right. And when I look at like, I've even gotten so frustrated that I actually looked at the finances for the company and like, how much do they make? Do they have like, do they have enough? Are they making enough money to? Are they just not hiring on purpose or things like that?
You are so into this game; it's kind of scary. you looked into their.
Well, when you're going through 5, like no, I just wanted to see because I wanted to see how big the company actually was. The reason why was because like a lot of these things came to mind, like EA doesn't have these problems, or they do have these problems, but on a smaller scale, or like why are these issues still going on for exactly? And it's like it's 4 years later and this bug still exists, or this has still not been addressed for like 2 years. Why? And it's hard for DE to see a lot of this stuff because I think in a lot of their dev streams, it's a lot of like you get a lot of fanboys. I call them fanboys because it's just exclamation plat everywhere, and it's like people who actually really want to say something. It just gets buried under all that, and it's like so the only thing that we're really left with to communicate with DE is forums. But forums are forums. Like it's internet. This is if there were different eras. This is like the era of like. Have you guys ever seen like people try to argue on forums? It's like like watching a kindergarten throw like like.
Have you gotten my mail?
Food fighting. Like it's just so bad. Like it's just really, it can get really, really disorganized and very chaotic. So to filter through a huge, like a massive, like it's a pretty big forum, to be honest. There are like lots of information being put out there. So for them to find out really truly how the community feels about certain things, it's very difficult, and I don't blame them for that.
Just reading all that, like filtering it out, is like
yeah, exactly. And you already have like 10 million things you have to do in the day because you don't have this team, or you don't have. And in your case, maybe in Dee's case, it's one guy who maybe does what normally a team does, and on top of that, he has other responsibilities too. That's how I see it. And so this, I don't know if this has created disorganization issues with some of their updates, but like for example, Plains of Eidolon, you would get a lot of like patches that were happening, or a lot of hot fixes that they would address, and then
we talked about
like break again. Yeah. And it's kind of like we've talked about this in Discord, like as playing as a clan. It's like, why is the lure doing this, or like why aren't Vombalist spawning again on Eidolon hunts, or why is this pathing
they fixed
back? Yeah.
And
it's like why? It's like and then in my opinion, it was like it happened so much that I've created. That's what led me to do this, because it's like I love this game so much, and then I was like worried. I was like, well, what's wrong? Like, why can't you guys fix this stuff? Like, what's going on? And then people even ask me like, hey Jay, like, how come you know how to fix this thing? Like when we leave and it says like 3 out of 4, and then the guy's like all the way on the other end of the map, and you say go operator. How do you know that? I'm like, because this has happened so many times to me that I figured out how to fix it. Like the desync issue is to go operator, or like for example, if you're in the Plains of Eidolon, you can't swap into operator, or there's a heavy desync issue.
Deploy the map.
Yeah, stuff like that. Deploying K drive is what resyncs you to the host, and it's like these things I had to figure out on my own because I had so many hours in the game and leading squads through and saying, okay, like teaching newer players or whatever, like how to do stuff. They're like, and that's what led this big push for me to find this information. It's not like I'm stalking them or anything. It's not that at all. It just the questions that raised in my mind were like, why do you still have the problems? Why? And so there were like several issues, and one of the biggest things, like I said earlier, was they don't seem to have like a master file that they all update, and it's not all used by the same people. So I think that some people when
the problem we were talking about, right, where an update seems to be reverted, like the change, like
right,
because of another update.
Exactly that. That's exactly it. It seems like they had to repatch it from another file, or I don't know what it is, but it seems like the same files weren't being used. So whatever
like
2.1.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. You go ahead.
No, I was just going to interject with one statement. It's just it feels like they take 2 steps forward and then still like 1 step back. Like it's just like
kind of like that. Yeah.
It's a little bit back and forth. Yeah,
it's back and forth.
So to kind of help, like I guess, like we kind of create a little platform here. Maybe we can talk about what we think are some of the core issues in the game, right? So that way D doesn't have to filter all those forums and things, and especially with your experience with your 11,000 hours in the game, and Andre, you've been around since founder. You've seen a lot of the game too, and maybe we can bring to light what we think are some of the core issues.
Well, one of which is more, I don't know if it's recent. It's probably been here for a long time. It's definitely the excavation. Freaking leftover markers.
Yeah, like we call them ghost markers. So for those of you listening who either don't play excavation, or maybe you noticed it or you don't. So what it is when you do excavation, right? The mining rig drops down, and then you do the whole thing. You finish it. You go to the next one. That little yellow marker from the HUD, it's still there. It stays there. But when you look at the mini map and you look at the overlay map, it doesn't show it, right? It's a ghost marker on your screen and it stays there permanent. Yeah. So unless you're looking super carefully at your little mini map, or you keep your overlay on, like just more things on your screen basically, like you have all these confusing markers that don't work basically, right? Is that right, Andre?
Yeah, I have so much trouble trying to like find like, all right, where's the next drop gonna be? And I'm literally traveling from point A from the very beginning where the first one dropped all the way to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Yeah, it's misleading because like sometimes it affects the flow of the game. Definitely, I've been in actually those matches with you. Like I mean those games with you, Andre. Like you're like heading towards it, and then I'm like, why are you going away? Oh wait, oh sorry, I was following the HUD. Oh man, okay, I know where it is now. So it's very confusing.
But you also yell at him for following the HUD. It's like
yeah. I shouldn't have to do that. It's true. I'm always like, minimap doesn't lie. That's what I always say. Minimap doesn't lie. That's like my line. Well, my thing is like, I guess like I know that this has come up and it's a very very sensitive issue. It's a very talked about issue, and it's like when DE does dev streams, when you guys do dev streams, like you play the game,
right?
Yeah. You bring up the console and stuff like that.
Pretty and all their fashion frames and stuff.
Yeah. And I understand like a lot of this has to be like very positive and it's like new content that's coming in. That's great, but it's very clear that you do not play the game. And I'm going to stand behind that. And this this is not like an accusation. This is not an attack at all. It's just like it's just that it's an observation and it's something that I noticed and I've noticed that for sure you do not play the game in depth. Like you might play it like 20 minutes here. Try this out, maybe 10 minutes of testing here, or maybe whatever testing you do, but you do not actually go into a mission and try to do the things yourself. The reason why is as a player and trying to actually do the grind yourself. And the reason it's rampant everywhere. Like this is an obvious thing, but it's not an accusation. And I know that with all the charts that you have to look at and all the data that DE you have to do, you probably don't even have time like in your personal life because you probably have family that you want to get to and stuff like that. And your own personal life, whatever it is. And I completely, I'm for that. But it doesn't mean, it still doesn't address the fact that these issues exist and they need to be addressed on a more timely fashion. Like some of these things have been ongoing for years and it really affects like the reputation of the company I love. That's how I look at it. Because when you look at unpolished stuff that comes out like this, it reflects on the company's integrity. And to me, that's something that in this day and age that it's intangible. You cannot buy, and you do that through, I guess, over time of constantly being there and constantly, meeting a certain standard, and that has diminished over the years and has resulted in a lot of the negativity I think that has come about in this day and age. An example of that would be, let's say, from Plains of Eidolon release, let's call it. I know this can be hard to swallow, but let's call it like chaotic. From the chaos that started and from what it is now and how stable it is now, a lot of this stuff, in my eyes, we had to test it and we had to suffer through it. And like the suffering, when you look at it, let's say we tallied up all the resources that were lost, even in the first few days with all the people that were there, we're talking like millions of resources and a lot of play time that a lot of people were very disappointed about. And you cannot revert that disappointment. So why release it enough? Yeah, exactly. Or that time lost, right? And people are going to feel really soured about that. And as positive as you want to be and say, we're coming out with this new content. Well, if it's packaged the current way it is, then it's very, very negative that the player base sees it that way. Like
it's a risk with the new content.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have to test it again. So I want to try to shift this to a good note. Railjack, for example, it was terrible when it first came out. We love the direction it went in, and I do at least. That's also like controversial. Some people don't like it, but I loved it. The only problem was the bugs, like the loss of loot, a lot of like trying to do mission objectives when the door doesn't even open at all, and then you just got, let's say, Void Hole, which is like one of the best mods in the entire game. This actually happened to me. I farmed for Void Hole for hours, and finally I got it to drop, only to get blocked by a door that wouldn't open. I did get it. I had to contact customer service for it, but they can only give me one thing, even though I farmed like all this titanium, and titanium is pretty important. But I had to choose between like all this different loot, and I could only choose Void Hole because that was the one that was most difficult to farm with a 0.2, I think, % drop rate. Now, with DE, they've shifted to a point where it's like, where they're bringing community feedback, and that completely changed the Railjack experience. Like now, wow, it's so good. Like even when I valence fusion like blueprints, I can choose option 1, option 2. For me, that's like massively game changing. Like that's so good. It's not like it just overrides my previous option. I can actually now choose between 25% increased Railjack damage when I have no shields versus something else. That kind of like this kind of like catering towards your community really changes the feeling of the update when it comes through. And now here's the thing that I really would suggest, if possible, why not release it in that form though? Like, why not do a lot of these things before it gets to the point where we have to test it, suffer through it, and that suffering diminishes the integrity of the company, the perspective that players have of the community. And that's my main point here. And I don't like it because I love the game. I like the community. The community has changed over the years. But why did it have to get to the point where we lost 80% of our clan? Because they're just like, we don't like the game right now, or this or that. And that's sad. That's just the sad part, right?
I mean, I know so many of my friends who started playing the game with me, and they left, and I asked them why. It's like, come on, dude, it's bug frame, and it's kind of sad.
Absolutely, yeah.
And even now, like when I asked them, hey, the game's a lot better, and like, oh, are you sure? What about these problems? Like, oh, I can't give you a good answer because some of these problems still exist. Like markers still fly around the screen. They're like delayed or something. It's strange. And menus. Oh, this is a fun one. Jay, what's your experience with? How about let's talk about Kuva Liches menus.
Okay, so specifically, going back, I know I'm reiterating a point, but either you don't play the game, it's because of this stuff. Like, it's something that takes me that normally I would have access to in, let's say, like 30 seconds. It takes me like half an hour to sift through this. An example would be like Kuva Liches. I don't farm Kuva Liches anymore. Not only because like I'm content with the stuff that I have, but because it's at the point right now where in my menus I just don't bother with it. Like, it's too much. I have like, I think by like 7 days I already had like 30 something, 20 something Kuva Liches already captured, or like vanquished or whatever. And so my issue is like, if you look at like, let's say like, if when you guys get the opportunity, so this is in video form, so you guys can even go back. If you look at even the Kuva Lich menu, for example, it's in the right place. It's in the codex, in my opinion. That's great. Fine. We look at the Kuva Lich menu, and as soon as you click it, all you see is a bunch of icons. That's cool, but there's no actual readily available information on this menu, and then I have to specifically go into each menu. I know I'm going to get very specific here, so hang tight. Let's say, why would I be looking at this menu in the first place? That's the question that I would ask, and the question is for weapons, because that's mainly why we farm Kuva Liches, or maybe ephemeras, right? It's for the gear. So if this was listed on this page, that would be great, but it's not. So I have to actually go into every single lich. Now, if you have a player who's farmed, let's say, over the years, let's say years now, let's say not let's say like a few weeks, let's say years worth of Kuva Liches, you're going to have like maybe 100 of these icons on your screen, but that does not translate into any readily available information. So I have to go through 100 liches, let's say, to find, I'm trying to find a specific weapon, let's say the Kuva Brahma, and let's say it was like, was it 58 or 57? Right now, I don't bother finding that out, when I believe that it would be nice if I could, because like I have to actually go into every single lich, look at it, see his face, see the progenitor, birthplace, weapon bonus, which is what actually I'm looking for, plus the weapon, which is what I'm looking for. The immunities and weaknesses do not matter, because that's not why I'm looking at this Kuva Lich. I'm not really going to look at him and ever say, oh, he was immune to cold. Yeah, this is not important to me anymore. Or maybe it is information that someone might want to look at. Then they can specifically go into that lich menu, that specific lich, to find it. Okay, but I think weapon information, at least, or even like percentage weight of that information, like what type of element it was. Let's say toxin 80, like let's say let's say 58%. Then that should be listed on this menu, and I can look at it and compare it even to other things. This would be great, almost like an Excel spreadsheet.
I think that speaks to like the general lack of information accessibility in Warframe, right?
Right.
In menus and submenus.
That's correct.
And say like for me, I like to farm fishers. It's a way for me to trade, get things, and a lot of players use this too. One of the issues I have is, when farming, and this is also for new players, if I already have something, let's say built, let's take for example like Limbo Prime, right? And it's already formatted and things. If I go into a picture and I get like Limbo systems, it will not show me that I already have Limbo. It will not. It will only show me if I already have a Limbo system.
Right.
But it won't show me if I have it or if it's formatted. And although in the arsenal, all this information is displayed, but it's not consistent throughout the rest of the game. And
that's right.
Yeah, and so the only way for me to check this is I have to go into the chat, type out the name of that part or the name of that Warframe to check. There's so many things in the game, and not everyone can be expected to remember all this stuff. But chat is now being used as another step menu where I have to memorize something, press all these, jump through all these tubes to get information, and after this, all within 10 seconds, I'm allowed during the Fisher just to know like how many I need or whatever. Right, the information is just not accessible.
Yep, that's the same thing with even in the market actually. Like DE joked about this in a dev stream, and I'm sorry to say this. I know that it was a joke to say, "Oh, we finally did it," and you guys were being sarcastic. And D Rebecca was like, "Yep, you guys only waited like 3 years for this." And to be honest, it was like the forma symbol or the build symbol. It wasn't funny to me at all. Like I was already like to the point where I was like, okay, this is like why? Like why now? Like why didn't you do it like 3 years ago? And I know that I'm pretty sure that one of the main DEs, if not like this task doesn't fall on a team. I don't think like a lot of these things, and I don't think the team even plays
at this point.
Yeah, but like yeah. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. It doesn't like fall on one person or as a team. There's probably a backlog of things that needs to be overhauled in Warframe. But the thing is, there's so many core aspects of the game in general, and I'm just speaking basic things that are just not up to par with other games. For example, checking inventory, right? Just in Orbiter, I have to click through 3 menu screens to get to my inventory. How does that make sense? It's the whole menu screen is just a complete mess. It's not streamlined. And in a mission and any other game, I can press one button to bring up my inventory. In Warframe, in order to check for an item, either I have to go through chat, so I have to press my button, open up chat, I have to begin typing. Oh, there's autofill, which is great in case I forget how to spell it. That's actually very helpful. But then I have to click that item again to bring up the screen that shows me this huge. It covers my entire screen, so I can't see what's going on in my mission. I might die, but this I need to find out whatever's happening. It covers my entire screen, and I see this rotating thing, and then the number of how many I have. Okay, now I can find out how many more titanium I need to farm or whatever.
Right. Yep.
In every other game, I can press one button. It brings up a small menu, and it has horizontal tabs that are everything's sorted out for me, and it only takes up a third of my screen. And I can click between the two to interact them separately, so I don't die, or I can manipulate, or hover over things and have information pop up instantly for me. Warframe, simply not up to par.
I think like with some of these things, like for those who have actually finished the War Within and they actually have operator access, doing this in combat is not that bad because we can just press 5 default key, whatever, press Control T, bring up or press T to bring up the hold down Control, then press T, and then actually
press the chat, open the chat, and you'll stay in operator. People don't know that. You have to press Escape again, right?
Yeah.
To get into menus.
The thing is, like, if it's like War Within, if you don't have that completed, which is like a lot of the noobs, and they try to do this, and let's say like they're trying to farm a Smita Kavat, for example, right? Like you need 120,000 alloy plates for your incubator. You don't really know how much. You didn't check how much you had before going in. It's punishing to them because they didn't check. Because now they have to do it in combat while getting shot at, and they don't have operator yet. And then they're pressing escape, and then they're going through this, and they find the information, they come back, and then they see people reviving them. And if you're in a bad party,
right? Even if they have operator, they're still limited by the time that their operator can stay in void mode, right?
Right.
Not everyone has maxed out operators like we do.
This is true. And so like there are a lot of issues. I know I'm going back to this, but like even market has its issues too. Like when you're trying to look at, for example, the forma thing. Like I didn't really finish the point on that, but it's like, let's say there's no information displayed on the weapon if you even have it. If you even built it, you actually have to go into the specific weapon itself. You have to go that far. But it seems to be like you have to specifically go deep into like the actual weapon, when a lot of these things can be submenu. Like when you're looking at the things as a whole, a lot of icons can be representative of this stuff. Like the point of a UI now, like if you like UI has changed, and I know that I don't want to go into this whole spiel of things, but I feel like DE really needs to know this, that as the game has evolved, so has UI, and so has a lot of other things. If you ever you go to school, like anybody who I know who takes like like graphic arts or like web design, stuff like that, and they design UI menus, one of the very first thing they're taught is that you have to make sure that the information is consolidated in a form that's readily available. And that's the point of a UI. Like it's to be both accessible in information as well as like prioritized in terms of easy to use. Like if you go to your focus menu and you see activate, that little button, I mean, it's like a tiny little red bar. Every single person who finishes War Within, I have to actually tell them how to activate it because they don't know how to activate it. Because it should be like a much bigger button to say activate. It should be like almost like as if it's a priority. But because it's so small, people don't press that. So a lot of these things, like I don't want to tell D go to school, but like I think doing some homework on this would really help, because for me, my skin on my UI looks beautiful, but the actual navigation through the UI as well as through HUD can be very, very difficult in the game.
Go through so many screens, and
exactly.
And that in itself actually can cause a few bugs. I think Jay, you showed me an interesting screenshot where you had you were on the
simulacrum.
Simulacrum, but you were also looking at your Kuva Lich, and also like what was? Can you describe it again? I can't even process all the.
There are a few. There are a few. I had like a few menus that were overlaid on top of each other. This happens a few times. Simulacrum has one where the new Simulacrum, you can actually die when you're actually looking at stuff now. So your menu just kind of cuts out. And if you actually die in it, like the menu shows horizontally. I mean, almost kind of like 3D, like when you press in your arsenal when you go to I believe like resources in the bottom right. If you actually click that, all the other menus kind of shift to a horizontal. You guys should try it. Some of you may not even know that this exists.
I think
the menu
we'll
shifts completely differently.
Video for this.
Yeah, it shifts like to a different angle, and it's like, wow, that's kind of cool. I didn't even know that existed, but that actually happened to me. That actually happens to me in the simulacrum sometimes. I know D. Scott doesn't like simulacrum, but I think that some of the menu items that need to be revisited. I think because like you can actually die in there while you're actually in the menus getting shot at, and then the bug happens. So then the menu the UI kind of messes up. But like, yeah. But I would say like even let's say another big thing for me, and this is why I'm imploring DE to do this, is like, for example, let's say Anton, like you wanted to find out, you can only choose like 3 syndicates really in the game comfortably. You can't choose 4, and then have to play min max balance stuff like to balance the other 2. But let's say you have 3, and let's say your clanmate has the other 3, which is the way we organize our clan. And let's say for you to find out what you don't have built, or even have built or not, it doesn't matter. You don't have or have, and then find out what I can give you. That took us how long? Like 30 minutes, I think, right? Like for me to see.
Yeah.
For us to go, okay, so you do need a single receiver. Yeah. Right. It was very, very, it was like a really big challenge. And I believe that a lot of this stuff can be organized in a way that's a lot more, I don't know I'm lost for words right now, but in a way that's like, that saves time.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just the current state. Like the UI, the menu. Like even if we're talking about just the HUD, right? Like in any other game, the most important things, like where if you have health and some kind of energy as a resource, those are the 2 biggest things displayed on the screen. In Warframe, it's these 2 tiny bars, and for your allies, it's even smaller, right?
Yeah.
And maybe we have to look at maybe how to display those things. That's up to the designers, and maybe they want to look at like how other games do it.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, that's one of my gripes, and I think the marker system is it's a relic of beta Warframe. It's stylistically doesn't match anything else in the game, and it's really a lost opportunity to make that really like a visual part of the story of Warframe, right? That because Warframes are artifacts of the Oricon, right? And the Oricon have beautiful stylistic scrolling like motifs and even the projections of like technology. None of that is reflected in the Warframe's UI.
You're talking about Void or Lua, right? Like where you go in and you see like beautiful architecture, even like their architecture is completely different. Yeah,
the architecture, even just like the like their holographic projections of like the screens that they use, right? None of that is connected to the Warframes in any way. If anything, the Warframes they feel removed from the Oricon, even though the Oricon are the ones that invented them, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, point made.
Yeah, I really hope that like any of the DE that listen to this, I hope they don't feel that like I'm slamming on you. And I know that there's a lot of frustration. I just want to say on my end, from having to deal with a lot of these things that I believe that are massive time sinks. And I really wish that there was a way that updates could be, number one, released in a more polished form, because then like I really mean this, and let's just imagine this was a perfect world for a moment. Let's say DE was the company that always released updates not only on time, but actually they do pretty well on time, to be honest. They're kind of rushed. But let's say it was on time, and let's say it was polished. Mm-hmm. Let's say Railjack came out when it came out was what it is now, right? Like, and that's tough to say. I know that's
and all they had to do was like tweak some resources need to be dropped a little more. Like all that stuff, that's fine. That happens all the time in other games. But let's
say it was
that game, that's kind of big.
And then let's say that you had the community reflected on this, like the community's reflection was mirrored by your like the way the updates were made. So they were like really, really well done, and they were polished. There were bugs. The old bugs were already gone and addressed. How many people would still be playing this game? Like, I'm sorry to say this, but I think this company would be way better than like companies that that I'm not going to say it, but like they involve with microtransactions and they steal. It's basically like almost
really
fraudulent.
DE like has maintained their moral integrity, their business integrity.
Yep.
Their ethics are stellar, and I cannot fault them in any way. That they are there for the player base as much as possible, and
that's right.
And honestly, like that is the reputation that the D has earned, and rightfully so, I have to say.
Yep. But they've also, like, D, if you're listening, you've also, from a community standpoint, like, I'm the kind of guy that would want to go to bat for you, but I need ammunition. And the thing is that I'm running out of ammunition. So a lot of these things, update-wise, the polish, a lot of the older bugs, let's say with UI and stuff like that, even menus, like a lot of them are vertical. They're not even really horizontal or grid form, or they could be updated. They could use a lot of work. And if they were like that, then this game would be a very, very different game in my eyes. People wouldn't leave we wouldn't have such a massive shift.
I call it basic stuff, and I don't want to sound like D doesn't have their basics down, but it's like just looking at like the first menu, like. It is a collection of things that don't really seem to make much sense. And when you click equipment and you see the next list of things, like some of those things don't even have anything to do with equipment. It kind of boggles the mind a bit. I do want to give a moment for Tyler especially to speak, because he's such a technically sound player. He is gifted to play video games, I have to say, and I am envious of his skills at times. But he did play Warframe with us for a long time, but he doesn't play anymore. And I'll give him the opportunity to share maybe why that is, or his experiences with today's topic.
Yeah, so like for me, bugs like they're really common in this game. So like they're not really an issue to me anymore because of how common they are. They are more like, when I find a bug, they are more like amusing than annoying. Like, it's fun.
Is it because you don't care anymore? But that's kind of an interesting perspective you have. Is it just like, oh, another bug?
Like, yeah, it's like just another bug. It's like nothing new, nothing special. Like, and some of the bugs, they are even like amusing. Like, you can do some really dumb shit with bugs. So yeah, like the issue with the game is, for me, is definitely not the bugs. I mean, they are annoying sometimes, yeah, but like it's not the main reason I left. The main reason I left is more like updates. Like, they don't bring much new things. Like, they are usually recycled content, or like they don't bring any new things to like the table. So like, yeah, if like they can make like a perfect update that really interests me, I might come back to the game.
What's your idea of a perfect update? Like, would it be like Railjack, where like a whole new like fight is introduced, or was Railjack, not it for you? Like, what's a perfect update for you?
Something distinct, definitely unique. I'm not really good with suggestions, but like, yeah.
That's okay. I just want to kind of like, understand where you're coming from, and if you could, if you did have one, then that could at least, kind of paint a picture for us. I think for me, why many people enjoyed Railjack though is because it did feel very different from the rest of Warframe though, right? It was the first time we got to fight in a ship, ever in Warframe, for being a game that's run Space Ninjas for so long.
Space Wars.
And it was fantastic because that's one of the core identities of the game, and now we got it. And I think as the game grows and becomes more fleshed out, and hopefully we get to see some of these, what we feel are core issues of the game, improved upon, that we can continue playing this game for maybe another 10 years. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe.
I think the problem is like mostly like my problem, cause I don't really have like the attention span to like grind out.
Oh yeah, don't feel apologetic about it, because everyone has their own experience, with the game, and people leave different games, all the time. We decided to stick with the games together, partly because of the game, but also because of the camaraderie that we built, the community we built, right?
Yeah, like I come back like maybe like once in a while, like during like the big updates, for like maybe
you just,
a couple of days or so.
You're always ready
like,
to come back. You're just looking for the
look,
content that's right for you, right?
But then I usually get bored after a while and just go back to playing another game or something.
Right. Well, I think that kind of wraps up today's topic, I think, unless there's anything else to add.
No, well, I think that's finished.
All right.
I was hoping in Railjack. I was hoping for Railjack that they had like bigger ships to take out. Like like, I don't know if you guys ever played fleet games. Like, I know this is completely off topic, but like, well, it is on the update topic, but whatever. Let's say like you had like full destroyers or cruisers. Like, there are so many different types of quote unquote capital ships now. Like, in many games that they've created, they have like carriers, they have like destroyers, they have battleships or whatever. They have all kinds of different size ships, and then they also have subsystems. Like, for example, let's say they have firing subsystem or something like that, or they had like a fighter bay. They had engines, and I know the engines was recently added, which is really cool. You could actually knock the engines out. But let's say there was like an actual Grineer cruiser, and it actually had a fighter bay, and every few minutes or whatever the timer was, they would release fighters constantly until you took out that subsystem. or the bridge, for example. If you took out the bridge, like their navigations would be completely paralyzed, or you took out the engines, they're just floating adrift now. They can't even turn; they're just completely drifting. So this adds a dimension of the gameplay that's very, very 3D in a lot of different games. For example, because like Railjack has kind of a stabilization issue. I mean, a stabilization thing, not an issue. It's actually stabilizing thing where you fly straight, and it just kind of like it kind of it rotates you back into whatever the original was. But
You're
in
back
true,
to vertical.
true space, in true, it's exactly that. But in true space, there is no 3D. It's 3D, and there is no real like that. So sometimes when you're actually like, there you go, and then you go on, bombing runs. You can actually like plan that. You can actually like maybe the fighter bay is next to this or something like that. So you would fly in planning, and then you'd gun the shit out of that thing, like bah, 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 you watch the explosions, like cool, fighter bay's gone, and then you would just kind of spiral, maybe like 360 or whatever, and then you would move into like another subsystem. I don't know, something like that. That would be really, really cool if they had a major Railjack fleet combat update. That would be so cool. But anyway, that's my thing. Yeah,
that's cool, man.
I just hope.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's kind of like the path for Warframe, right? Like, anything is possible. Just DE is always looking for great ideas like that, and being a space game, there's no limit. It's infinite. I want to thank Jay, Andre, and Tyler for joining us today. This conversation. Yeah.
No problem.
Well, it's been great having you guys, and I want to thank all the listeners for joining us today. And thank you to DE for this wonderful game you created and let us enjoy. This has been the Cryopodcast.